Everything we desire in life, success, confidence, happiness, fulfillment, begins with a single decision to act as if failure were impossible. When we remove the fear of failure from our thinking, we release a power that lies dormant within most people. The truth is, our limitations exist not in reality, but in our imagination. What separates those who rise to greatness from those who remain where they are is not superior talent or luck. It is the belief that success is inevitable if they act with conviction. When you act as if you cannot fail, you step into a different state of being. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and begin creating it. You stop asking, "What if I lose?" and start asking, "What if I win?" You begin to live boldly, purposefully, and with the quiet certainty that every step forward brings you closer to what you seek. The mind, when guided by unwavering belief, becomes the greatest force in the world. It attracts opportunities, people, and circumstances that align with your vision, not by chance, but by law. Most people hold themselves back not because they lack ability, but because they overestimate the danger of failure. They rehearse defeat in their imagination so many times that it becomes their reality before they even begin. But imagine what could happen if you replaced every doubt with determination. Imagine what you could accomplish if you lived each day with the calm assurance that success was already written, waiting for your action to bring it forth. Every successful person has lived this truth. They may not call it by the same name, but their results reveal it. Belief precedes achievement. The mind sets the boundary, and belief breaks it. You were never meant to live small, to doubt your worth, or to let fear dictate your path. You were meant to build, to create, to explore, to test the limits of possibility, and then to push beyond them. So from this day forward, act as if you cannot fail. Think as if success were inevitable. Speak as if your words shape your future, because they do. Work as if every effort is guided by purpose, because it is. The world moves for the man or woman who knows where they are going and believes that nothing can stop them. Your destiny begins the moment you stop waiting for permission and start acting as if you already possess what you desire. When your belief becomes stronger than your fear, nothing remains impossible. Belief creates reality because every action, every invention, and every transformation in history began first as a thought that someone believed to be possible. The mind is the workshop where all great achievements are born. Whatever we hold in our imagination, when mixed with faith, begins to take on form and substance in the physical world. The outer world we experience is nothing more than a reflection of the inner convictions we hold. A person who believes in limitation will see limitation everywhere. A person who believes in possibility will find opportunity in every direction they turn. It is not the world that changes first, it is the mind. The moment we begin to truly believe in something, the world rearranges itself to make that belief real. When you believe with conviction, you unlock hidden reserves of power that otherwise remain dormant. The human mind operates on the energy of faith. When you believe you can achieve something, your subconscious mind begins to align every thought, emotion, and action toward that vision. You start to notice chances you previously ignored. Ideas begin to surface at unexpected times, and coincidences start appearing with perfect timing. People call it luck, but it is not luck. It is belief transforming thought into reality. The man or woman who holds a clear belief is like a magnet pulling the unseen forces of life toward their desired goal. Belief creates a bridge between the invisible and the visible, between thought and form. Consider how a child learns to walk. The child doesn't analyze failure, doesn't calculate risk. It simply believes that walking is possible because it sees others doing it. That simple belief becomes enough to endure every fall, every wobble, and every stumble until success is achieved. The same law applies to every aspect of life. When you remove the possibility of failure from your belief, you grant yourself permission to persist. You continue when others quit because you are guided not by what you see, but by what you believe to be true. Belief doesn't eliminate obstacles, but it makes them irrelevant because your focus remains on the vision rather than the difficulty. The most powerful truth is that your mind cannot hold two opposing beliefs with equal strength. If you believe in success, your energy moves toward creation. If you believe in failure, your energy moves toward hesitation. Life responds to whichever belief is dominant. That is why people who believe they are unlucky continue to experience misfortune. They unconsciously attract situations that confirm their belief. The opposite is also true. Those who believe they are capable, favored, and deserving of good fortune move through life with a quiet assurance that shapes every encounter. Their belief colors their tone of voice, their posture, their persistence, and their choices. It becomes a silent force that speaks louder than words. When you decide to believe in your own power, you begin to see how much of your past hesitation was born not from inability, but from self-doubt. The mind has always been capable, but it needs direction. Belief gives that direction. It is the command that tells your subconscious mind what reality to create. Once you decide that something is possible, your brain begins to filter information in ways that support that decision. You start noticing new ways to act, new people to connect with, and new paths that were invisible before. The belief itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything in nature obeys the law of belief. Birds do not question whether they can fly, they simply do. The seed does not wonder if it can grow, it begins to sprout, because that is its nature. Humans alone have the power to doubt, and that doubt is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The moment you replace doubt with faith, you return to your natural creative state. You stop resisting your own potential and begin expressing it effortlessly. You begin to live as if success were already yours, and the universe adjusts itself accordingly. Belief also shapes the way you interpret the world. When two people face the same event, one may see failure while the other sees feedback. The difference lies not in the event, but in the belief behind it. The one who believes they can't fail sees every setback as a lesson, every challenge as a test of strength, and every delay as preparation for something greater. This perspective is not mere optimism. It is a disciplined mindset born from understanding how belief molds experience. Your belief is the lens through which you view reality. Change the lens, and the picture changes. The greatest mistake most people make is waiting for proof before believing. They want to see evidence before they commit their faith. But the law of belief works in reverse. You must believe first, and the evidence follows. The mind cannot create what it doubts. Faith is the seed, results are the harvest. When you act with belief, you plant the seed of your future success. Even if the ground seems barren at first, the seed is alive and growing beneath the surface. Eventually, the results appear, but only because belief sustained the process long enough for them to bloom. Belief also has a powerful effect on others. People are naturally drawn to those who believe in themselves. Confidence communicates without words. It inspires trust, attracts cooperation, and awakens the same energy in others. A person who believes in their purpose doesn't need to persuade anyone. They embody their message. Their actions carry weight because they flow from conviction rather than uncertainty. In this way, belief becomes contagious, it spreads, multiplies, and elevates everyone it touches. The truth is, you are always believing in something, either in your power or your limitation. There is no neutral state. Every thought you entertain strengthens one belief or the other. When you choose to believe in possibility, you are choosing to align with growth, expansion, and creativity. When you choose to believe in limitation, you align with fear, hesitation, and stagnation. The direction of your life follows the dominant belief in your mind. The key is to understand that belief is not blind hope. It is an active, living force. It requires you to think, speak, and act in harmony with your vision. It is a quiet but steady conviction that shapes your choices and sustains your discipline when results are not yet visible. Belief keeps you moving when logic says stop. It keeps you calm when others panic. It keeps you focused when distractions arise. It is the invisible hand that guides your visible results. Belief creates reality because it changes the way you use your mind, and your mind creates everything you experience. Once you decide that success is inevitable, your entire being begins to function in a new way. Doubt loses its grip, fear loses its power, and excuses lose their voice. What once seemed impossible becomes not only possible but inevitable because you no longer question it, you simply live it. Fear is the only real obstacle that stands between you and the life you desire. It is not the world, not the lack of opportunity, not the opinions of others that hold you back. It is fear, quietly whispering you are not ready, not capable, not enough. Fear disguises itself as caution, as logic, as preparation, but beneath all of its masks lies the same message: stay where you are. The truth is that fear has no power except the power you give it through attention. The moment you stop feeding it with thoughts, it begins to lose strength. What most people call failure is often just fear doing its work in advance. They imagine what could go wrong so vividly that they never allow themselves to see what could go right. Every dream dies first in the imagination. Before a person fails in the outer world, they have already failed within their own mind by surrendering to fear. The imagination, when filled with worry, becomes a weapon turned against its owner. It magnifies problems, invents dangers, and paints disaster in high definition. But the same imagination, when guided by courage, becomes the architect of destiny. It can design a vision so compelling that fear has no space to exist. What you picture internally determines how you move externally. If you visualize failure, hesitation becomes your habit. If you visualize victory, persistence becomes your nature. Fear is not something to eliminate completely, for it has a useful purpose. It alerts you to pay attention. But beyond that, it becomes destructive when allowed to dominate. The problem is not fear itself, but submission to it. Great achievers feel fear just like anyone else, but they do not let it dictate their choices. They have learned to act in spite of it. The difference between success and stagnation is rarely talent, it is courage. Fear paralyzes, courage mobilizes. Fear imagines defeat, courage imagines progress. Both are products of the same creative mind, only the direction differs. When you act while afraid, you teach yourself a powerful lesson, that fear is not fatal. Every time you take a step forward in the presence of fear, the mind learns that it can survive uncertainty. The next time fear appears, it has less influence because experience has weakened its authority. This is how confidence is built, not through the absence of fear, but through repeated exposure to it while continuing to act. Courage is not the denial of fear, it is mastery over its influence. The individual who trains themselves to move forward despite fear eventually discovers that what once seemed terrifying becomes ordinary. Fear thrives in inactivity. The longer you wait to act, the stronger it becomes. It feeds on delay, grows in silence, and expands in imagination. Action, however small, weakens it immediately. When you move, you shift your focus from what might go wrong to what you are doing right now. You begin to regain control over your thoughts, and in that control, fear begins to lose ground. Every action taken in the direction of your goal sends a message to the mind: I am capable, I am moving, I am stronger than my doubt. Soon, action becomes momentum, and momentum becomes confidence. The illusion of fear is that it presents itself as reality. The mind cannot distinguish between imagined danger and real danger unless you consciously intervene. This is why so many people avoid harmless situations, public speaking, expressing their opinions, starting a business, because the mind reacts to imagined failure as if it were physical threat. The body produces the same chemical reactions: the racing heart, the sweaty palms, the shallow breath. Yet once you face the situation and realize that no real harm exists, fear begins to dissolve. The mind learns the difference between imagined pain and actual risk. Fear often comes from overthinking the future. The mind projects ahead, trying to predict outcomes it cannot control. It builds elaborate stories about what could go wrong, forgetting that the only thing we ever truly control is the present moment. When your attention is anchored in the now, fear loses its foundation, because fear cannot survive in action. It only thrives in anticipation. That is why some people spend their entire lives preparing but never beginning. They rehearse failure so many times in their mind that they exhaust their energy before taking the first step. The antidote is movement, however imperfect. One step forward destroys 1,000 imaginary fears. It is also important to understand that fear often grows stronger around the things that matter most to you. The bigger the dream, the louder the fear. This is not a sign that you should stop. It is a signal that you are moving towards something significant. Fear protects the comfort zone because it senses that beyond its border lies change, and change means growth. When you start to see fear as a guide rather than an enemy, you can use it to identify where your greatest potential lies. Whatever you fear doing the most often hides your greatest opportunity for expansion. The people who achieve remarkable things are not those who never feel afraid, but those who reinterpret fear as energy. Instead of seeing it as a warning to stop, they see it as proof that they are alive, stretching, evolving. They convert that energy into focus and determination. They know that fear is a companion on the road to success, not a barrier blocking the way. They feel the same resistance as anyone else, but have trained their minds to move through it rather than retreat. This is what gives their actions a sense of power and decisiveness. Fear loses its grip when you face it repeatedly. Each time you confront something that once intimidated you, you reclaim part of your power. You begin to realize that the thing you feared was rarely as bad as you imagined. Most fears vanish the moment they are faced because they depend on your avoidance to survive. The mind can only exaggerate what it has not yet experienced. Once experience enters, illusion fades. You become stronger not because the world changes, but because you now understand how little control fear truly has over you. Behind every hesitation, behind every excuse, behind every postponed dream, fear is the silent force at work. It disguises itself in reasonable language. I'll start when I'm ready. I need more information. The timing isn't right. But underneath each of these is the same emotion. Fear of failing, fear of judgment, fear of uncertainty. When you strip away the excuses, what remains is the choice: act or retreat. Every time you act, fear diminishes. Every time you retreat, fear grows. Life rewards those who move forward despite trembling hands and uncertain steps, because courage is the currency of progress. The mind becomes what it practices. If you practice fear, it becomes your habit. If you practice courage, that becomes your habit instead. Every moment you choose to step into discomfort, you are teaching your mind a new pattern. Fear may visit again, but it no longer stays. It becomes background noise rather than the voice of authority. You realize that fear was never a wall, only a shadow projected by doubt, and once you walk toward it, the shadow fades. Action builds confidence because movement transforms thought into experience, and experience transforms uncertainty into understanding. Confidence is never something we are born with. It is something we construct step by step through the act of doing. The mind can imagine endlessly, but until we move, the imagination remains untested. It is in motion that we discover what we are truly capable of. When you act even without certainty, you begin to gather proof that you can handle more than you believed. Each action creates evidence, and that evidence strengthens your faith in yourself. Confidence grows not from perfection, but from participation. Those who wait to feel confident before they act never begin, because confidence is the reward of action, not the prerequisite. The moment you take a step toward your goal, something shifts inside you. You no longer live only in theory, you begin to live in practice. The energy of action changes the way you think. You stop wondering and start experiencing. Every attempt, whether it succeeds or fails, gives you new data about your strengths, your limits, and your opportunities. This self-knowledge builds inner stability. You begin to realize that progress is not about avoiding mistakes, but about learning faster than your fear can stop you. The simple act of doing brings clarity that no amount of planning can provide. The first action may feel small, but it creates momentum. Momentum builds belief, and belief generates confidence. An action, on the other hand, breeds doubt. When the mind is left idle, it fills the silence with worry and what-ifs. It begins to question every possibility and exaggerate every potential risk. The longer you think without moving, the larger your doubts grow. But the instant you act, you interrupt this cycle. You shift your attention from imagined outcomes to real results. Even if the result is imperfect, it is real, and reality is far easier to improve than imagination. The mind calms when it has something to work with. You stop guessing and start adjusting. And in that adjustment lies growth. Action silences the voice of doubt because progress, no matter how small, replaces speculation with evidence. Confidence is the natural outcome of accumulated proof. Each time you act and survive discomfort, your mind records that experience as a reference point. I can do this. With repetition, these memories become your foundation. You start to trust your ability to adapt, to recover, and to find a way forward. You become less dependent on external reassurance because your confidence now comes from evidence, not approval. You have lived through challenges and proven your own capability to yourself. Confidence this way cannot be shaken easily because it is rooted in personal experience rather than borrowed belief. Action also builds confidence because it changes how you perceive yourself. Every time you take initiative, you reinforce an identity of strength. You begin to see yourself as someone who moves forward, someone who acts despite fear. This shift in self-image is powerful because the mind always works to stay consistent with its identity. Once you start believing that you are the kind of person who acts, hesitation becomes less natural. You are no longer trying to be confident. You are simply behaving in alignment with who you already believe yourself to be. Action requires identity, and identity sustains confidence. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have is thinking that confidence comes from success. In truth, confidence comes from resilience. Success may inspire pride, but it is overcoming failure that creates unshakable confidence. Each time you face a setback and continue, you teach your subconscious that you can endure difficulty. You realize that fear of failure is worse than failure itself. You stop needing guarantees before acting because you trust your ability to adapt no matter what happens. This kind of confidence cannot be given, it can only be earned through action. It is built in moments when you want to quit but keep going anyway, when you act before you feel ready, when you choose progress over perfection. Every master began as a beginner who acted repeatedly. Skill is simply the accumulation of effort over time. Every repetition, every correction, every attempt builds layers of unconscious competence. What once felt difficult becomes natural. The process of repetition strengthens not only ability but certainty. You begin to rely on your training, your habits, and your consistency rather than emotion. Confidence becomes quiet. It is no longer loud declarations but calm assurance. You do not need to convince yourself because your actions have already proven what you are capable of. Action also attracts support. When others see you moving toward something with intention, they are inspired to help, to connect, to open doors. Opportunities appear not because you waited for them, but because your movement signaled readiness. The world responds to energy, and action is energy in motion. When you are active, visible, and engaged, you begin to attract people who share your momentum. Collaboration becomes easier, and external validation follows naturally. But this validation only amplifies what was already present. Confidence that began internally through your own willingness to act. The beauty of action is that it removes the illusion of perfection. It teaches you that the path to mastery is messy, unpredictable, and filled with trial and error. You stop fearing mistakes because you see them as part of the process. This freedom from perfectionism releases creative energy. You become more willing to experiment, to explore, to test ideas without fear of judgment. And with each experiment, your knowledge expands. You learn not only what works, but also what doesn't, and that knowledge sharpens your intuition. Confidence grows stronger because it is now backed by understanding rather than wishful thinking. When you consistently take action, you begin to experience a profound internal shift. You no longer see obstacles as signs to stop, but as signals to adjust. You stop waiting for motivation and rely instead on discipline. You act not because you feel like it, but because you have trained yourself to move. Each act of discipline reinforces your trust in yourself. The more you act, the less you depend on mood, and the more you depend on intention. This independence from emotion creates a stable kind of confidence, one that remains steady even when circumstances are uncertain. Action also reveals how much potential you have been overlooking. As you push forward, you realize that what once intimidated you now feels manageable. The tasks that seemed impossible become routine. Each new level of experience expands your sense of what is possible, person, and that expansion fuels your confidence further. You begin to live with a quiet knowing that you can figure things out, that you can handle whatever comes next. This is the essence of true confidence, not arrogance or overestimation, but calm readiness built on action and evidence. The relationship between action and confidence is a continuous cycle. Action builds confidence, and confidence inspires further action. The more you do, the more capable you feel, and the more capable you feel, the more you do. This cycle can transform a timid dreamer into a determined creator. The key is always to begin even before you feel ready. The first step is always the hardest, but it is also the most powerful because it sets everything else in motion. Each small act becomes a declaration that you are choosing movement over hesitation, courage over comfort, and growth over fear. Success requires assumed certainty because the mind performs best when it operates under the belief that success is inevitable. When you act with doubt, you divide your energy. One part moves forward while the other holds back. But when you assume success, when you commit completely to the idea that what you desire will come to pass, all hesitation dissolves. The subconscious mind receives the message that there is no alternative, and it begins working tirelessly to make that belief reality. Assumed certainty is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is the inner conviction that no matter the obstacle, the outcome is already determined in your favor. Every great achievement begins with a decision to believe before seeing proof. The world conditions us to wait for evidence, but the truth is that evidence only appears after faith has been applied. The mind shapes perception, and perception shapes reality. When you move as if success is guaranteed, you see possibilities that the doubtful mind cannot see. You notice details, people, and opportunities that align with your purpose because your belief acts like a filter, allowing only supporting information to pass through. You begin to experience what people call luck, but it is not luck. It is the result of unwavering certainty directing your attention toward what serves your goal. Certainty gives power to intention. It removes the language of if and replaces it with when. Instead of saying, if I succeed, you say, when I succeed. That single shift in language transforms your emotional state. It removes anxiety, builds focus, and strengthens perseverance. Doubt creates delay because it invites the question of whether the effort is worth it. Certainty eliminates delay because it assumes the reward is guaranteed. This assumption changes behavior. You prepare differently, work differently, and think differently. You invest yourself completely because you no longer fear wasting effort. Every step becomes purposeful because the destination is no longer in question. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. When you consistently act and think as though success is certain, your mind begins to accept that image is fact. It adjusts your behavior, emotions, and even physiology to align with that expectation. You walk differently, speak differently, and carry yourself with a quiet confidence that others can sense. People respond to that energy. They are drawn to it because certainty radiates stability. This is why leaders who assume success naturally inspire others. Their belief becomes contagious, creating an atmosphere where progress feels inevitable. Assumed certainty is also the antidote to fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty. It feeds on indecision. When you commit fully, fear loses its leverage. It cannot manipulate someone who has already decided the outcome. Even when circumstances seem unfavorable, the mind anchored in certainty interprets challenges as temporary tests rather than permanent barriers. This shift in interpretation changes everything. Instead of reacting to problems with panic, you respond with patience and strategy. You know that setbacks are not signs of failure, but steps within the process of fulfillment. There is a powerful psychological phenomenon that occurs when you assume success. The brain begins to activate the same neural pathways as if the goal were already achieved. This process, known as mental rehearsal, primes your nervous system for performance. Athletes use it before competitions, speakers before stages, and entrepreneurs before launching ideas. When the mind practices certainty, the body follows. Your performance becomes smoother, more instinctive, because the brain has already rehearsed success so many times that it feels natural. This alignment between mind and body creates efficiency that doubt can never produce. People often mistake assumed certainty for blind optimism, but the difference is profound. Blind optimism ignores obstacles, assumes certainty, acknowledges them, but refuses to be stopped by them. It is not about pretending the path is easy. It is about knowing that difficulty does not change destiny. It is the unshakable inner decision that success will happen, whether in the first attempt or the 50th. This mindset transforms frustration into fuel. Each challenge becomes confirmation that you are progressing toward your vision, not evidence of failure. When you assume success, you also train your mind to interpret reality in supportive ways. Two people can face the same situation. One sees defeat while the other sees feedback. The difference lies in belief. The person who assumes success views every experience as part of the journey, even the painful ones. This interpretation keeps motivation alive. Energy follows belief. When you believe in the inevitability of success, your energy remains steady even in uncertainty. You keep showing up, keep working, keep refining, because deep down you know that persistence guided by certainty cannot fail. Assumed certainty also shapes how you communicate with yourself and others. You stop using language that weakens conviction. Words like maybe, or try, or hope are replaced with I will, I am, and I can. This linguistic discipline conditions your mind to operate from power rather than passivity. You start expecting success instead of wishing for it. Expectation is a creative force. It sends a message to your subconscious that success is not optional, it is natural. And the subconscious mind, obedient to belief, begins to arrange your behavior, attention, and habits to make that expectation reality. The energy of certainty is magnetic. People trust those who appear sure of themselves, not because they are infallible, but because their conviction makes others feel safe. In business, in relationships, in every area of life, certainty communicates competence. It signals that you have already accepted the result internally, and the outer world is simply catching up. This is why certain individuals seem to move effortlessly through life. They are not luckier. They are simply aligned. Their inner state of certainty creates external order. Assumed certainty also simplifies decision-making. Doubt multiplies choices while certainty narrows focus. When you know where you are going, every decision is measured against one question: does this move me closer or farther from my goal? This clarity removes distraction. You stop chasing conflicting priorities and start building momentum in one direction. Each choice compounds the next, creating acceleration that doubt could never sustain. You find yourself achieving in months what once seemed to take years because all your mental, emotional, and physical resources are aligned. The human spirit thrives on purpose, and purpose thrives on certainty. When you act with conviction, you access deeper levels of creativity and resilience. Obstacles that once intimidated you become opportunities to prove your determination. You no longer require validation or reassurance because the belief within you is enough. You are guided by inner certainty rather than external approval. This autonomy makes you unshakable. Even when results are delayed, you remain calm because you know delay does not mean denial. The result is already yours. Time is simply catching up. Certainty is not something you wait to feel. It is something you decide to assume. The decision itself creates the feeling. Once you declare that success is inevitable, the mind accepts the command and begins building reality around it. You begin to move with purpose, speak with confidence, and persist with quiet determination. The doubts that once occupied your mind begin to fade because there is no longer room for them. You are no longer testing the water. You have already stepped in. The act of assuming success transforms uncertainty into direction, potential into momentum, and vision into lived experience. The law of attraction in motion is not a mystical idea. It is the natural operation of thought and belief shaping experience. Every thought you consistently hold in your mind sends out a signal, a vibration that draws to you the circumstances and people that match it. You do not attract what you wish for. You attract what you expect, what you feel, and what you believe. The mind is like a broadcasting tower constantly transmitting frequencies, and the world responds with matching energy. When you think from fear, you invite experiences that reinforce fear. When you think from faith, you invite experiences that strengthen confidence. Life reflects the dominant pattern of your thoughts. The law of attraction begins within the imagination. Whatever you hold clearly and emotionally in your mind begins to gather substance. When you visualize a goal with intensity and repetition, the subconscious mind begins to treat it as a directive, a command to be fulfilled. It starts seeking evidence, ideas, and opportunities that align with that mental image. You begin to notice signs, coincidences, and connections that seem to appear out of nowhere, but in truth, they were always there. You simply could not perceive them until your focus changed. What you think about expands, and where your attention goes, your energy follows. The key to making this law work in your favor is emotion. Thought alone is not enough. Emotion gives thought its magnetic charge. A casual wish produces a weak signal, but a feeling infused with certainty, gratitude, and purpose becomes a powerful current. When you think about something with strong emotion, You are impressing that image upon the subconscious mind, and the subconscious begins arranging both internal impulses and external conditions to bring it to life. This is why passion is so important. It amplifies attraction. When your emotions and thoughts are aligned, creation accelerates. Belief is the foundation of the law's operation. The subconscious does not question your beliefs, it simply executes them. If you believe you are destined for success, your mind works to create situations that confirm that belief. If you believe life is difficult, your experiences will reflect that expectation. The law of attraction responds to consistency, not contradiction. You cannot think positively once in the morning and spend the rest of the day in doubt and expect harmony. The vibration of your life is determined by your most frequent thoughts, not your occasional wishes. What you dwell upon long enough eventually manifests, because repetition impresses it into the deeper levels of consciousness. The law of attraction does not mean sitting still and hoping for results. It means aligning thought, feeling, and action toward a single direction. When your inner world is synchronized with your goals, you actually become inspired rather than forced. You find yourself taking steps naturally, effortlessly, as though guided by instinct. This is because your mind is now attuned to opportunities that match your desire. People often call this intuition, but it is the same law expressing itself through awareness. The clearer your focus, the more precisely life mirrors it. Doubt, fear, and impatience interfere with the process because they create mixed signals. You cannot attract abundance while constantly feeling lack. You cannot draw love while expecting rejection. The universe responds not to words but to vibration, and your vibration is created by how you truly feel beneath your statements. This is why gratitude is such a powerful amplifier. It transforms your emotional state instantly. When you are grateful even before seeing the result, you signal faith, and faith draws fulfillment. Gratitude tells the universe, I already have, and by the law of attraction, what you already claim internally must appear externally. The law also operates through the company you keep and the environment you maintain. Thoughts are contagious, energy is shared. When you surround yourself with people who believe in growth, success, and possibility, your own frequency rises. Their attitudes reinforce your belief, and your belief reinforces theirs. Likewise, negative environments filled with complaint and doubt can drain the power of your vibration. The mind absorbs whatever it is exposed to repeatedly, so choosing what to read, listen to, and engage with is a form of attraction management. You are constantly tuning your mental frequency, consciously or unconsciously. Visualization is one of the most direct tools for engaging the law of attraction. When you see your goal in vivid detail, when you imagine the sounds, feelings, and scenes of your desired reality, you are planting seeds in the fertile soil of your subconscious. These mental images are blueprints that the mind will begin constructing in the real world. Repetition strengthens them, emotion energizes them, and action grounds them. Over time, the line between imagination and reality blurs, and what began as a vision becomes an experience. This is not magic. It is focus amplified by belief. The reason this law seems to work more powerfully for some than others is consistency. Some people think clearly but inconsistently, shifting from confidence to doubt and back again. This creates confusion in the signal. Others decide once, deeply, and never contradict that decision with disbelief. Their conviction creates a continuous vibration that cannot help but manifest. The universe, or the field of infinite intelligence, responds to stability of purpose. A steady signal always attracts a steady result. It is important to recognize that the law of attraction does not only work for goals. It works for everything, positive or negative. If you dwell on problems, you attract more situations that feel like problems. If you think constantly about things you fear, you energize those outcomes with attention. The law does not judge, it merely reflects. That is why awareness is the first step to mastery. You must watch your thoughts as you would guard a garden. Pull out weeds of doubt before they spread, and water the seeds of faith until they bloom. Your mental atmosphere becomes the climate in which your life grows. When you begin to consciously apply this law, small synchronicities appear first. An unexpected call, a chance meeting, an idea that leads to opportunity. These are confirmations that your frequency is shifting. Each time you recognize and appreciate them, you strengthen the connection. You begin to expect alignment rather than coincidence. Expectation becomes your natural state. And expectation itself is creative. The more you practice this awareness, the more precise your attraction becomes. You start shaping reality deliberately rather than by accident. The law of attraction in motion is simply the process of thinking with purpose, feeling with faith, and acting with intention. It is the understanding that life does not respond to effort alone, but to the energy behind that effort. A person filled with self-belief, gratitude, and focus can accomplish in months what others struggle to achieve in years because their energy is not divided. Everything they do carries the power of alignment. Their words, decisions, and behaviors all broadcast the same message: success, growth, fulfillment. And the world, always faithful its law, responds in kind. Living as if you cannot fail is not a reckless leap into delusion. It is a deliberate alignment of thought, emotion, and behavior with the certainty of success. It is the understanding that failure is not an endpoint, but a temporary condition, a step in the process of becoming. When a person truly acts as if they cannot fail, they begin to move with a quiet power, free from hesitation, free from the paralyzing need for approval, and free from the fear of making mistakes. Every step becomes an expression of faith, every action a declaration of confidence in unseen outcomes. This attitude transforms not only results, but the individual themselves. Acting as if you cannot fail changes the way you think. It shifts your mental focus from avoidance to creation, from fear to purpose. Most people move through life trying to escape failure, constantly guarding against loss or embarrassment. Their energy is spent on defense, and in protecting themselves from defeat, they unconsciously limit their potential. But when you decide that failure cannot stop you, you begin to think differently. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What can I learn? What can I try next?" The mind becomes open, creative, fearless. Ideas flow more freely because the fear of judgment no longer blocks them. In this state, even setbacks become resources, fuel for wisdom, refinement, and growth. This mindset also transforms action. When you act as if failure does not exist, your movements become decisive. You no longer wait for perfect timing, perfect plans, or perfect conditions. You begin knowing that progress itself will create the conditions you need. You trust that each action, no matter how small, is moving you forward. The person who acts without fear of failure takes more action in a month than a hesitant person takes in a year. And because success is built on momentum, the fearless always surpass the cautious. The difference is not in talent or luck, but in belief. The belief that action, not perfection, creates opportunity. Confidence built on the assumption of success generates a magnetic energy. People are naturally drawn to those who believe in themselves. Opportunities, relationships, and support begin to flow toward the individual who carries an air of certainty. This is not arrogance, it is conviction grounded in self-trust. When you carry yourself as though success is inevitable, others sense that energy. They respond with trust, cooperation, and enthusiasm. The world often reflects back to us the way we see ourselves. When you walk with assurance, the path seems to clear. When you doubt yourself, obstacles appear larger. Living as if you cannot fail tunes your entire being to the frequency of success, and life harmonizes with that frequency. Failure loses its power when viewed correctly. It is not a verdict, but feedback. Every person who ever achieved anything great faced defeat, often repeatedly. But they treated each failure not as an identity, but as information. They studied it, learned from it, and moved forward with renewed clarity. Acting as if you cannot fail does not mean you will never experience setbacks. It means you will not be defeated by them. You see each challenge as a necessary part of the process. You understand that the road to mastery is paved with correction, not comfort. When you adopt this outlook, failure becomes a teacher, not a threat, and progress becomes unstoppable. The imagination plays a powerful role in this state of mind. To act as if you cannot fail, you must first see yourself succeeding. Visualization conditions the subconscious to expect positive results. When you imagine your desired outcome vividly and repeatedly, your mind begins to behave as though it is already true. You speak differently, stand differently, think differently. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between real and vividly imagined experiences. It simply follows the pattern of belief impressed upon it. By continually seeing yourself as capable and victorious, you instruct your inner faculties to align with that vision. Action then flows naturally from belief, and belief strengthens through action. The habit of expectation becomes central to this way of living. Expectation is faith in motion. When you expect success, you act with a calm assurance that guides every decision. You stop second-guessing yourself and begin to trust the process. You speak words that align with your goals, take steps that affirm your direction, and persist when results are not immediate. This steady expectation creates consistency, and consistency always breeds achievement. Those who expect failure often find it, not because fate is cruel, but because their thoughts and actions unconsciously create it. Those who expect success often find it for the same reason. Expectation organizes energy, focus, and persistence toward the desired result. Living as if you cannot fail also frees you from the need for external validation. You stop living for applause or recognition and start living from purpose. The opinions of others no longer dictate your self-worth or your pace. You act because the act itself is meaningful, not because someone approves of it. This independence from judgment gives you true freedom. It allows you to experiment, to take risks, to innovate. You become guided by your own vision rather than by fear of rejection. Paradoxically, when you no longer need validation, you attract more of it. Because authenticity commands respect. People sense the calm strength of someone who moves from inner certainty. Another dimension of acting as if you cannot fail is emotional mastery. The person who lives this principle does not allow temporary moods to dictate long-term direction. They have trained their emotions to serve, not control, their goals. They maintain composure under pressure, faith during delay, and patience during uncertainty. They know that emotion, like thought, is energy, and energy directed by purpose is power. By holding steady in attitude, they create consistency in results. Emotional balance becomes their compass. It keeps them moving forward regardless of circumstance. Ultimately, living as if you cannot fail means understanding that the only real failure is the refusal to continue. Every time you rise after falling, you strengthen the belief that nothing can permanently stop you. Each recovery builds confidence, and each step forward expands possibility. The habit of persistence becomes second nature. You no longer measure progress by how easy the path feels, but by how steadfastly you walk it. You realize that success is not an event, but a state of being, a mindset that endures beyond obstacles. When you live from this awareness, something profound happens. You begin to feel an inner calm that no circumstance can disturb. You no longer wait for guarantees because you have become the guarantee. You move through life with the quiet knowing that no matter what happens, you will adapt, learn, and prevail. The world bends toward those who persist with conviction, who act with faith before seeing results, who believe so deeply in their purpose that failure itself becomes fuel for victory. This is the essence of living as if you cannot fail. A life guided by certainty, driven by courage, and illuminated by the unwavering belief that every step forward leads closer to fulfillment.